way early. And as a result, ran through the mountains.
I've heard that. There's a few other ones that I did. That's a good thing.
That's true, that's true.
Oh, we're late. Put this thing in the ground.
Afternoon, everybody. It being 2 o'clock, I hereby call the January meeting of the Citrus County Aviation Advisory Board to order. May I invite everybody please to stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Ms. Jenkins,
Yes,
how the heck
sir.
are you? Happy New Year, everybody. It's January, it's 2024. Who here has already made the mistake of writing 2023 on a check or something?
I've been good this year.
Okay, very nicely done. Would you mind calling the roll, please?
Sure. Today in attendance, we have Carl Flanagan,
Present.
Mark Klingel,
Here.
Charles Carr,
Here.
and Heiko Kallenbaum.
Here. Having 4 out of the 7, I would say that we have a quorum, so we can in fact continue. Has everybody had a chance to review last month's minutes?
Yes, sir.
Any questions, any objections, any corrections that need to be made? If not, I'll take a motion, please, to accept the minutes.
I'm so moved.
Second.
Mark moved. Charlie second. Those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. The December minutes are approved. At this point, we've got a robust audience today. Thank you very much for coming. Madam Commissioner, how the heck are you? Is there anybody that, from the public that would like to speak?
I'll just give a quick update. Andy Chan, Right Rudder Aviation. We're rocking and rolling. Mesa program's running well. Our Part 61 and 141 school is rocking and rolling. So everything's going well. Selling fuel, and our hangars are 100% full as they usually are. So business park is looking beautiful. Very, very, very beautiful. So super excited. So quick update.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Seeing none, ready to move on. New business. Mr. Regan.
Yes, after our last meeting about the issue with, or the potential issue with the power lines along Penn Street, I took a look at that and wish I could get a closer look, but I see what you're saying. They seem to be a little bit taller. And I know I'm new to this. I know this has been brought up before, me, but I'm going to take a look at that and see if probably putting a power line ball markers on there as well should
Okay.
help. Is that what you were thinking in line of?
Yeah, I think so. Now that those trees have been cut back,
Mhm.
that power line is exposed and not very visible.
Okay,
Great, thank you very much.
no problem.
That is all the new business we have. Old business, financial analysis, and business planning study.
Yes, further along in this, and today we'll go over a presentation that Dr. Byers will present, and that's going to be about our SWOT analysis. So
Great.
that's
Do
it.
we want to do that now or after the rest of our normal business?
I would recommend after.
After? Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. FAA training is like right around the corner, is that right?
It is.
Good.
Yeah, I finally got in touch with my point of contact, and the only thing we're waiting on is a location for this training. Haven't heard anything yet, but when I do, I will pass it along.
Great. So we got a hold of the FAA?
We
rep?
did. Yeah, so, yeah, more to follow.
Had he been in hiding or just difficult
It-
to?
Difficult to get in touch with,
Yeah.
again, short staff.
Okay,
Hiding is good.
Yes, the 31st of January, 2024 is the scheduled date. Time and location is to be determined.
January 24?
January 31st, 2024.
Got it. And do we have personnel that are planning to attend this training specifically laid out? I know that Mr. McDonald was planning on representing the board at that.
No one's been identified yet. We could still go with the original plan, which they invited the sheriff's department and Mr. McDonald.
Perfect, perfect.
And
Thank you.
I'll follow up with that.
Hangers?
All right. I got a recent update. There are 0 vacancies altogether. I know the page said that there's 2, but we have 2 that are pending. So INF, 16 T hangars, 0 vacancy, 21 waiting. And CGC, 20 T hangars, 0 vacancies, 20 waiting. And CGC, 2 box hangars, 0 vacancies, 6 waiting. We need to build more hangars.
Good deal.
If you build it, they will come, right?
Yes, exactly, exactly. Are we building more then?
The future, sure.
Hopefully. Board of County Commission updates?
Nothing at this time. Yep.
Okay. So I understand with respect to the expiring terms,
Oh,
we have
Yes.
applications for all three
yes.
districts.
Yep.
And so what is the plan for that moving forward?
Create an agenda item and get it to the board as soon as
Okay.
possible.
Yeah, we talked about that. Seems awfully late to be doing it after the first meeting of the new term.
Just going on with the dates and what's available. That's what I have to work with.
All right.
There-
What-
Some of it is the deadlines to get things on the agendas. Sometimes it's so far in advance, you kind of have to roll to the next one. So by the time the applications were taken until the end of December, so now we're in January, we've already missed the January deadline, so we have no choice but to do February. So we're looking at February 20th. For the nominate and appoint to go to the BOCC.
Right, right. And there's a meeting, a BOCC meeting on February 6th, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Are we past the deadline for that agenda as well?
We are definitely past the deadline for
Right.
that. They really are, it's almost like a month in advance.
Okay. Then let's see what we can do the next time we have term expiration approaching. Let's see if we can make the deadline the end of November for applications. Just be a little bit further ahead of it. Make the deadline November 30th. That way the board has time, or Commissioner Davis or whoever on the board is going to be reviewing the applications has the time to do their due diligence and get something on the agenda so that the new reps can be seated at the beginning of the board. Does that make sense to everybody?
It does, and I do have a question. I know that you've asked us individually to let you know of any absences, and obviously today we do have 3 that are missing. In order to have a quorum, we do need 4. Do you see anyone in the February board meeting that will be absent? Because at that point, I'm lapsed, so I would not be able to be counted, correct?
You can continue until they do.
Oh.
Since it's in motion.
Okay.
You stay until it's determined otherwise whether you're reappointed or replaced.
Okay.
But I think we mentioned last meeting that, Mr. Pulius was serving out his term, so we don't expect him to be at any future meetings. But other than that, everyone else would be in place based on their resubmittals until we get it taken care of. So it should be, hopefully, fingers crossed, nothing goes haywire, the March meeting where everyone is put into place with the notary and everything.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
No problem.
Thank you, ma'am. Major projects.
All right, Crystal River Runway Extension, we are going to be going out to rebid as soon as possible, and be soliciting hopefully shortly.
And
Right.
why are we rebidding?
Well, we had a score review, and there was a protest, and the county administrator recommended that we go out to rebid.
Okay. Thank you.
Crystal River Fuel Tank Replacement, that grant was signed by the BOCC. When I get that, hopefully tomorrow, I'll be sending that to FDOT to get them to sign it and just keep the flow going. Wetland removal at Crystal River, that's still ongoing, still on schedule. I don't see any issues why that would be late, and that's January 24th this year. Yeah. And when I get that information, I'll be sending that to the FAA for their review as well. Inverness airspace study obstruction removal. I have a request in with staff right now for their interpretation of the ordinance of City of Inverness for obstructions off the airport. When I get that, I'll be talking with my consultants and getting a plan in place to get these obstructions some attention.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Inverness Business Park, Phase 1 is on schedule, still for March 14th of this year. We moved the NTP, if you remember, I brought it up last time. We had a few hanging chads, if you will, that need to be taken care of, one of them being the lift station. I'm waiting on a couple of parts for that. And then there's a sinkhole in the DRA too that needs to be remedied. And painting the road, a few other odds and ends. About over 90% complete. But when that gets done, Phase 1 will be done, and we'll move on, hopefully, to Phase 2.
Nice, thank you.
Yep, and with Phase 2, talking about that, still talking with Florida Commerce, and some lessons that we've learned with Phase 1, we want to make sure that the language is in the grant for Phase 2. It's taken a little bit longer than what I wanted to, but I'm also kind of glad that we're able to address these concerns and not have to keep going back, pushing amendments and stuff like that, which will slow it down. Inverness corporate hangar grant has been signed by FDOT, just got it today. So now that that's on my plate, so I'll be pushing that through and getting that to the board as well.
Great.
And that is on schedule too. Inverness pavement and remarking, the grant, sorry, not the grant. The grant is going to be in front of the board next meeting. I think that's the 22nd, Monday. Airport signage and landscaping, still discussing a scope of work with our consultant, and then also discussing grant opportunities with FDOT. Just adding some more language to that and covering more area than initially planned, but it's a good thing. So looking forward to that project. So, and that is a 80-20 grant with FDOT. Moving on to minor projects and status reports. Excuse me. Inverness's AWAS is still old. Still plan on replacing it. We do have quotes in and working with FAA for our bill entitlements and filling out the grant application. The other ones are paint projects. Still, same thing, we're waiting for the county's RFQ for painting. When that comes out, that'll give us more leeway versus going out for all these separate quotes. So, and then ramp and deck for the old FBO is in terrible shape. Waiting for a quote as with facilities, Public Works, to get that remedied as soon as possible. And awning at Crystal River, still waiting on a quote, and I'm going to be following up with that soon, see what's the holdup, because it's been well over a month.
From whom are we looking for this quote?
I can't remember the consultants off the top of my head,
Okay.
but and that question for me?
I noticed that the reauthorization of runway 9 approach has fallen off the agenda.
Can you say that again?
The reauthorization of the runway 9 approach has fallen off the agenda. Do you have any idea what the status of that is?
I believe that still needs an Aegis survey, if I'm not mistaken. I'll look into this again. I'll look at the previous agendas as well. This is not coming to mind, but
I thought we had taken it off
Thought we
because
did.
it was pretty much everything set in motion.
that was my understanding.
And so obviously the concern is that.
It's not forgotten about.
Right, that nothing falls through the cracks there.
Okay, I think the reason why I took it off is because nothing's gonna happen. There's forward progression, but every month we bring this up, it's the same thing. I'll do that if you want me to, but
It's okay. I just didn't want it to fall through the cracks.
no, it can't. Not with this runway extension, and there's 4 projects that just go along with it. It will be addressed.
Good. Just so everybody keeps in mind that the airport becomes a VFR-only airport if the approach to 9 is not reinstituted before the 1227 is no longer authorized. In other words, when construction begins on that end of the runway.
Sure. Oh, yeah, that's
Yeah.
definitely being looked at.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, and if there's any closures of the airport, or the runway, you'll know. That, I believe, is it for me.
Okay, I think that's all we have for our normal meeting. Time for a presentation?
Time.
Let's do it.
Dr. Byers?
Just a clicker.
It is. Should be ready to go.
All right, well, good afternoon again, everyone. It's good to be back. I just spent 6 glorious days in DC where things always get crazy up there. I did more walking in 3 days than I did in 3 months. I was up there with about 14,000 transportation geeks from around the world, everything from bike paths to spaceports, and I represent part of the airport side of that spectrum, so my head's about to explode with all the stuff that's coming down the pipeline. But at any rate, this is a task that was built into the business plan, and to me, it's really kind of an important component of this because this is where we get an idea of what your constituency thinks, are the opportunities and the strengths, weaknesses, threats that they see as far as their experience with the airport and what they would like to see. So so we put the SWOT analysis out right after the meeting last month. Timing could have been better. Obviously the holidays kind of crept in. But what I did was I offered an extension to the deadline. I was hoping that maybe it would just something that people would hurry up and finish, but that didn't quite happen that way. But with the extension, it actually did help, and we got several more responses. All totaled, we got 5 specific responses for Inverness and 9 for Crystal River. What I'd like to do is very briefly go through what their perspectives were regarding each one of those categories. So with any look at all. And then after we're done, another part of the study is looking at your policies and practices as far as how you administer the airports too, and some of the things that I see could be recommendations for consideration. So, and again, the idea behind this whole project is give you the tools that you need to essentially make it easier for you to administer the airport's operations and development. So there may be some things that may take some heavy lifting, but there may be some easy things too, as far as components that you could implement. But really, the long-term objective is to find that path for both airports to be financially self-sufficient. So the county is not bearing the burden financially for operating each one of those airports. So the SWOT analysis, I think I talked a little bit about it last time. There's two basic components to this. One are the assets that you have now or would like to have. Those could be strengths and weaknesses. But that's designed to be those things that you can control or you have some influence over, as opposed to an opportunity or a threat, which are more external, but something that you're going to want to respond to or address in some form or fashion when you do start setting those goals and objectives. So, and again, a lot of this is their perception, those that responded to the exercise. And at some point, I think we'll have a chance to discuss those. It may not be here, but obviously if you have questions, we can entertain those. And as I mentioned, the externally focused environmental perspectives as well. So hopefully you can see this. This is a summary of the Inverness's SWOT analysis. Apologize for the fine print. And actually, there's another sheet that goes with this. This is actually the raw data. That this is every single response. And I've developed a coding strategy so that at least I can compartmentalize these responses so that I can see where people see each airport and the different components of that. So on the strength side, you can see where the some of them are pretty strong opinions about Inverness, and obviously the business park had a lot to do with it. I think people recognize the potential that has, and the fact that you're that far along already that it's going to turn into something, and that will be also integrated into the business plan. But they also looked at the aeronautical services. And there's essentially three components that I like to divide it into. There's aviation, which deals almost exclusively with the operation of the airplanes coming and going. So if it's a facility, it's the runway, taxiway, apron. If it's a service, if it's aviation, it's more air traffic, airspace, as opposed to aeronautical, which would be more of the FBO, fuel, hangars, those types of things. And then obviously non-aeronautical, which really doesn't have a direct connection to any of the aviation side of things. So you can see in this, in this example, that there is a really, like I said, a strong concept or perception that the land that's going to be available for development, the aeronautical services, and also the airfield facility. And on the weakness side, there is some issues with infrastructure. I'll get into that a little bit more in detail. Facilities like the hangars and tie-downs, and the management and the governance. So here, I'm going the wrong direction. Where's that? There we go. So the big takeaways here on the strengths is, like I said, the land for additional development, the fact that you have a 5,000-foot runway already, and the FBO services that are out there. I think, again, the respondents had very strong favorable opinions about how that operates. And then on the weakness side, the access road, the fact that you're right behind the fairgrounds, that they felt maybe there's an opportunity to improve that. And this is pretty consistent across the board, is the need for additional hangars, T-hangars in particular. And the fact that you do have a waiting list, is evidence that there is that interest in basing their aircraft there. One of the other ones was, the best way I could describe is the consistency in governance, is that I think the perception was that, how the airports are being treated is a function of each election cycle and how different opinions, attitudes creep into how these decisions are being made. There's really nothing specific, and there are some comments, though, that, and again, these are people expressing their opinions, so they're entitled to speak their piece. How you want to respond to them, I think, is part of the task that we can discuss later. On the opportunities and threats side, again, I think the fact that you can add aeronautical services, the location was actually, and that's pretty consistent in all these SWOT analyses that I've done, is that you essentially have that monopoly location. You're the closest airport to Inverness, and in a lot of cases, it may not be so much the people who base their aircraft at Inverness, but the people who come in to visit, this is where they really want to go. And I've been part of studies where how do you make those decisions on what airport you choose? It's really what the guy in back wants, or where you want to go. If you're doing business, in a certain location. And on the weakness side, there are some aeronautical services that you have no control over, but it's still a threat. I've got a slide for that. As far as location, there is some worry about the obstructions, obviously, and the threat that residential development might creep in, because you do have a lot of vacant property. And that's a threat that all airports share at some point, is just this encroachment. For whatever reason, people like to live near airports until they live near an airport. And then, well, didn't you know there was an airport? Yeah, but I didn't realize it was that busy. So you're going to get some of that. And again, I think there was a perception that the community itself doesn't quite understand the value of the airport as well, that you may have people in the community that don't even know you have an airport. That's happened before, where I've seen that as well. But that becomes an educational process, just essentially using every opportunity you can to spread good news, so that people do understand that the airport is an asset that belongs to the county. It belongs to them, really. So in some cases, maybe they can take advantage of that if they can. So as I mentioned, the location, just the fact that you're in Central Florida, the very strong flight training, that's the aeronautical services. That it is an attraction to people outside the local community, that you have people coming in to do their flight training from other places. And the fact that you have the Sheriff's Department on site. The threats, again, these are things you can't control, is the workforce. There were several comments about the fact, how do you recruit CFIs to come into the area to provide the flight training? And that's the FBO's struggle too, is how do you recruit these people and keep them? As soon as they get their hours, in a lot of cases, off they go to the airlines, and they just want to build time till they get there. There are a few people that saw the idea that 100 low lead may be an endangered product. I have my own views on that it's going to take a while for that to finally disappear. Just the whole general aviation fleet. Even though they do have some drop-in replacements now, I think there's still some skepticism. Does it really connect to what you had with 100 low lead? Is it equivalent? And it's really the octane that provides the power, particularly at the higher altitudes, that is driving some of that. Some airports are starting to offer the unleaded fuel. I know Naples recently started a program. They're actually subsidizing the unleaded fuel just to see if there is a market that might take hold. And as one or two aircraft owners start using it, maybe other people might be attracted to it as well. I'm working with a university program out in Utah that their whole fleet is powered with, it's not the newest version, but the 94 octane unleaded fuel. And they operate at high altitude already. Their base altitude is like 4,200 feet. So that's their elevation when they start, and they usually fly at about 8,000. And they really haven't had any issues. I was concerned, interested in the maintenance side of it, like how are these aircraft holding up with using that? And they're 100% unleaded fuel. So apparently that's working. And then again, I talked about the compatible land use. That again, there's that concern that you might not be able to protect yourself from residential encroachment at some point. Switching to Crystal River, there are some consistencies in the responses, although we did get several more responses than we did for Inverness. But it just seems that there's the same general outlook. One of the strong ones is as a strength is the aeronautical services that are available now through the FBO, and also the avionics shop, and the prospect that there's going to be more maintenance coming onto the field. So those were real strong indicators on that side. And on the flip side, there are also other services that they feel should be provided. And I'll get into a little more specifics here, what they saw. As far as the facilities, the airfield, I think in some cases that might be the approaches, like you just talked about, with the approach to runway 9. And the fact that I think both airports don't have a night approach available. And so are there things that you can do to counter that, to allow some operators to come in after hours? And then again, the hangars, providing that capability as well. One of those things you see, the non-aeronautical facilities, a lot of that is restaurants, just availability of restaurants close by. I think one of the comments is anything but Dairy Queen. And and that's a tough business. And again, that's, maybe a space that you don't want to operate in. But anybody that's in the restaurant business, just in general, has a tough time if you're not a franchise.
Well, they have Dairy Queen.
Yeah. Well, after a while, you just burn through that menu. And understand there across the street in that strip mall, there's a nice place to eat too. But there, I don't know if you were telling me the story about somebody got delayed, and I think the captain crawled out of the airplane, drove over to Dairy Queen, and brought sandwiches back for everybody, hamburgers, and fed everybody on the plane, just because it might be a while. But like I said, that's a tough business to be in. A lot of it's location, and in some cases, I've seen it successful where it's so good that people from out of town or from in town come out to the airport to eat, and a real popular restaurant. Which again, it may be the strength of the restaurateur that is providing it, and if you got something that's worth that trip, by all means. And again, the strengths would be the FBO and the other aeronautical services available. The fact that you have 2 runways, I think people recognize the value of that as well. On the weakness side, no cell service at Crystal River, and we can talk about what does that mean, how do you get into that, whether the FBO is willing to make that investment, or if that's something that you feel strongly about. In some cases you get at least FDOT help. Fueling facilities are also eligible through the FAA, but it's got a very low priority compared to some of the other things that are out there. Additional T-hangers, and I mentioned the instrument approaches as well, as they see that as the weaknesses for Crystal River. On the opportunities and threats, and again, some of this is outside your control specifically. And again, it's facilities, aeronautical and services aeronautical, and as advantages that you do have. And then on the flip side, again, the facilities that you don't have a 5,000-foot runway in, but that's being addressed now. And some of the aeronautical services that are not there yet as well. But you can see it really wasn't a real strong response in either direction on that one. And really the takeaways there was, the location, being on the Gulf Coast, you're close to, some of the nature, what they call ecotourism kind of thing. Fishing too, so, as the community grows, there may be some opportunities to capitalize on that too, as, people looking for places to go. The runway extension, it's in process, and also the FBO and the flight training are real strong positives. One of the threats, and this goes back to that aeronautical, or actually it's an aviation threat, is the fact that you're at a low elevation and subject to flooding. Some airports are having, after I think it was Irma, and I'm trying to think of the name of the other hurricane, and I don't know if you experienced it with the storm surge from the hurricane last fall, whether or not, you're starting to see that being more of a threat, that, the airfield could be flooded, but I suspect the highway would be in trouble first before it got to the runway. But still, it may be something that you might find yourself addressing in the future in terms of how do you prevent from, having your airfield flooded out. I know, again, at Naples, they have a picture, and all I can see is the very top of the taxiway sign, and I told the director that I didn't know you had opened up a seaplane base, and he could have operated like one for a while there, but it was about a $9 million fix for their airfield lighting, because that all got flooded out. And at this conference I was just at, there's a grad student that's studying what are the impacts to pavement that's been flooded out by saltwater intrusion, those types of things too. So it should be interesting to see what they come up with. And this is fairly consistent here. Some people picked up on it, is that just the general economy is a threat. So if we go into a recession, what does that do? We've been there before. We struggle through it. And we'll get back to where we need to be. So I didn't see any real surprises, in this exercise. To me, it helped me put a finger on the pulse of what their perceptions are. So it helps me start to see what can I provide in terms of the advice that the business plan is going to put forward that you can consider in terms of how do you see each airport going forward. So some of it's going to be priorities, some of it's going to be funding, availability. So all these things kind of start connecting the dots in terms of how best to serve each airport. And again, trying to treat them not so much as twins, but two different kids. Who's your favorite? And not so much that it's that blatant, but, each one has their own particular needs. And different environment, different users, tenants, those types of things. So, like I said, it gave me a much better picture of, how people are perceiving each airport. I'll just cover this briefly. One of the other exercises is looking at your policy guiding documents. And there's definitely some, now I totally did it.
Now you've done it.
I did it. What'd I do? Did I turn it off completely? But this idea of these policy guiding documents, and this is where, okay, what can you do to make it easier? So once you have your, your ideas together, that here are the things that we need. Number one, to protect yourselves, protect the users. And I'm talking about the rules and regulations that, currently you don't have that set of rules and regulations, which, people say, well, we haven't had rules and regulations for decades. Well, that only gets you as far as tomorrow. And something happens that could have been prevented. And, the first thing a lawyer is going to say is, well, didn't you have a rule against that? So that may be something new, and it'll be an iterative process. What makes sense. The one thing you have to watch out for is you set up some rules and regulations. Well, you better enforce them. Once you have them, because that's the next question. Well, you had a rule against it. Didn't you? Did you know about it, or how could you have protected yourself that way? So. And that's one of my perspectives, is just trying to help you guys figure it out. Looking at the minimum standards, there's some room for revisions. Probably the one thing is, fuel flowage fees and other fees. Right now, those are embedded in the leases, and there's no real room for adjusting that if it needed to be adjusted, and you have a basis for it, which is part of the financial plan. And how do you administer that as well? And if somebody else wants to come onto the field, what kind of standards do you have for them that are reasonable? And there you have a responsibility. And we're talking strictly about commercial aeronautical services, like an FBO or a specialty FBO. That it's an activity that they are offering this service to the general public. And so you, as the airport owner and operator, have this responsibility to protect them, so that the entity that's providing the service is qualified, capable, and you know who they are, and they have the financial resources to take care of everything. And that's some of that might be built into the lease. Some of it might be built into your insurance coverages that you require, those types of things, just to make sure that you're doing your part to protect that general public that's out there. And then there was a question about the T-hangar waiting list. And I know Todd and I talked about it. It's waiting list, how many people are on there that are actually bona fide aircraft owners that are waiting for a T-hangar? They're basing it somewhere else, or they're keeping it outside. How many of them are out there that are serious, that if their name came up and you gave them the phone call, hey, we got a vacancy, and I think you're at that point now with the vacancies that you do have, that are you ready to go? Well, no, not really, and then off to the next person. So there may be a way to administer a little more fairly. One option is to ask for some kind of a deposit to put yourself on the list. So they have some skin in the game now. So that may whittle that number down to 10 from 20. And now you got 10 people who are serious and put up a deposit that if my number comes up, I'm ready to go, let's do it. I can put together some kind of like a draft to see what that might look like. And then I think once you have an idea of who's still on your waiting list that would be willing to put up the deposit may give you a better idea of, who's really interested. And that gives you a better idea of your market too. So if you can fill up 10 T hangars tomorrow, I say do it. If you can, get FDOT to help. And that's the other big thing, is that it's a major investment these days, building T hangars. Last number I saw was about a little over 200,000 a unit for one unit.
Mhm.
And so 10-unit T hangars, like $2 million. And if you're trying to do it on your own, you can't afford it. They can't afford it either. You couldn't charge enough to recover your investment. With FDOT's help, you might be able to make that number work. But so that's going to be a strategy that we'll work through to show you. Okay, here's what you're looking at. If you try to do it on your own, or you get federal or state assistance, does that soften the blow? And figure it out that way. Also with your regular hangars too, the box hangars, and you might reach a point where you just don't have the capital resources to build more hangars. Do you revert to entertaining ground leases? So we'll lease you the land, you build a hangar, we'll give you a 30-year lease, and at the end of that lease, the ownership of the hangar reverts back to the county. And a lot of airports do that. And then finally, this development guidelines and architectural standards. So really the concept there is, if somebody did want to do something, particularly at the business park, are you going to set some kind of a palette? Like, what do you want the developments to look like, so that they're consistent, they're attractive, so it's almost like a campus type setting. And have as much information as you can lined up ahead of time, almost like a shovel ready. You're almost to that point where you've done a lot of their homework already, and you've got a nice list of people that they need to contact first, second, and third. How do you do business with the county, the utilities, and then here's the process. So you're going to do a lease, and you're also going to do the development. So planning, zoning, building codes, all that stuff, so that you have that all, at least organized. Make it easy for them to do business with you. And that's where you can set the tone that, hey, we're easy to work with, here's our process, and there's no surprises there. And I think that was about it. Also, at your next meeting, I'd like to talk to you about the financial performance. I was almost ready to do that now, but I'm running out of time. And then a draft of what your goals and objectives should be, for both airports as individual entities, and then collectively as the county. Where do we put our resources? There's a lot of moving parts to that. So with that, I'll entertain questions. If you have anything.
Yeah, with respect, thanks very much for all the work. Really appreciate it. Did you get, first of all, a question for you? Did you get enough response from us and from other interested parties? Do you feel to have a good consensus of what, at least the people that are paying attention, that are interested in the airport, what they feel they want to need?
I think so. It's not perfect, but these never are. But when you start seeing consistent answers, that's why that coding strategy was important. If you see the individual responses, they're all over the place. And that was the hardest part for me. It was like, okay, so how do I code this? Is it aeronautical? Is it service? Is it a facility? Do you control it, or is that outside? So I think there's enough that if we were missing something, I think somebody feel compelled, well, maybe you should have addressed this issue or not. But I think it encapsulated pretty much what if you were to take the pulse of each airport, what they felt about it. Like I said, it's not perfect, but it's data that we can build.
Thank you. Second question, with respect to the policies and practices, you've got some new documents that you suggest, such as the rules and
Right.
regulations, and also some other things you suggest updating. Do you have blueprints for that one could use to look at?
Sure.
Do you propose to draft some of these yourself, or just provide some guidelines? Because, as you say, for example, rules and regulations, Citrus County's never had that. Which is not to say that it's a bad idea to
Right.
to implement it, but one would really want to have some sort of a model for which to work and customize to the needs of our community. What do you have to offer in terms of that?
Well, I actually had a draft of the outline for the rules and regulations, which, is a template. I think that's what you're asking for. The danger is don't take somebody else's rules and regs and just change the name. Because in a lot of cases, you have to think them through. And does this fit each airport? Some of it's obvious, you don't smoke near an airplane at 50 feet, or don't park your car on the taxiway, kind of stuff. The silly stuff. But then hazardous materials and how they're handled, things like that. Where, and really the rules and regulations apply to anybody that's on your property. So it could be somebody who's just hanging out, and he lights up a cigarette while somebody's fueling an airplane right over there, and no, you don't do that kind of stuff. But I'll have templates, and with your minimum standards, I'll show you what I recommend or edits. Also with your leases, which is almost there too, that for your next set of leases, here's what I would recommend that you incorporate as language. Not that I'm giving you legal advice, and that has to actually go through your legal department anyway, just to see if we're on the same page. So there's a lot of that. And actually there's a general administration component to this, is essentially like an application process, or the T-hanger waiting list process, or somebody who provides a service that you really, there's not enough business to support them as a specialty FBO or something. I'm thinking like aircraft washing, or something strange, that you can actually let them on the airfield. You file an application and a permit fee, and they have insurance coverage for what they do. And that may be something that's appropriate. Some of these smaller airports, they don't have a mechanic. So they allow a mechanic from, he's working out of the back of his van or something. And, that's all they have. There's not enough business to support a mechanic full time. Or you don't have the facility. That may, I don't think that applies here, but I'm just saying as an example. That's something that's fairly common in some places, where that's the only way you're going to get somebody and still protect yourselves. That this guy's insured, and you can find him if you need him. So there'll be some of that as well, as far as giving you the guidance. And again, we can sit down and go through it. And I don't see this working here. We can strike that. And what about this that we can add as well? So the idea is to tailor it specifically to each airport, so that it fits the profile.
Great. That's all I have. Anybody else? Questions, comments?
I think that, what you're looking to do, and what's greatly beneficial for Citrus County, is that you're building a consistency, right? You're providing the benchmarks of, here's what we should be doing, are we not, and then how do we apply them either across the board to both, or is it more isolated to one over the other? But again, those consistencies is going to help us to protect. And I think from the legal standpoint that you were mentioning, that the county would be extremely appreciative of identifying those that are sensitive, that really need the attention, that we may or may not have put into place in the past. But going forward, I think to the extent some of this is going to be forward thinking, right? So that if we're not doing it, this is something we need to be doing, and how do we go about doing it? And I think that with your expertise and assistance, we can get there.
Yeah. And, you know, it's, like in rules and regs, is there a due process? So somebody, you know, drag racing up and down the taxiway, is that grounds to kick him off the airport? Well, maybe so, that's so egregious, but, you know, it could be an inadvertent something, and you get a warning letter, and then he does it again, and he gets, you know, maybe a stronger worded letter, and then 3 strikes you're out. So now you have you know, this due process that you know, it's in the record, did this, and now you have a basis to ask him to go somewhere else. And, you know, very rare, but it does happen, so.
One question. On assets and repairs, are you putting in that into your financial statements?
Yes. You know, some of that has to go through the CIP,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because I think, you know, and, you know, when you're doing that, it's more of the short term, like the, you know, 5-year, 6-year window. You know, your master plan, that looks a little bit longer out, you know, in terms of what development that you're proposing. I won't get into that much detail, but if there's something that parallels what belongs, it came out of this effort that actually belongs into the master plan or your next iteration, that it becomes part of that, you know, rationale for why it's there in the first place. You know, so, you know, for instance, T-hangers. You know, so, you know, if you feel that you could support another 10-unit T-hanger at both airports, you know, by all means. You know, and if you can get federal funding or, you know, FDOT funding, now you have a basis for it, and so that would go back into your other documents. But this essentially lays the groundwork and some of the justification for that. That, you know, and looking at it as an economic development exercise. So the business plan, and I just started looking at what are the opportunities in that facility of how much of it's going to be aeronautical or non-aeronautical, and if you know, that's going to be run through the airport. You know, it's airport property, so there's going to be terms and conditions that are essentially airport related, even though they're non-aeronautical. The FAA is going to look at it and make sure that their provisions are included in the lease. And then again on the terms, you know, so what are you going to be able to offer long term? You know, who's going to be your anchor tenant, maybe, and what's the market out there? You know, so a colleague of mine, I just had coffee with him yesterday. He actually writes for Aviation Week, and he covers the maintenance, repair, and overhaul market. Mm-hmm. And I was starting to ask him questions. Well, it's not so much the big operation with the big hangars and stuff, but component parts. So it might be somebody who does struts. You know, they overhaul struts, and they don't even need the airport. You know, they truck them in, or engines. You know, overhauling aircraft engines. There's a couple of companies identified that they just specialize in light combing, you know, O320s, you know, those types of things. That they're highly specialized. That why couldn't you have something like that here? And they just truck the engines in, and they crate them up when they're done, send them back out. So maybe they don't need the airfield. It might be nice, but so there may be opportunities there. And you know, I think South Florida, that place is about to implode on itself, and there might be a flurry of people looking for somewhere else to locate in Florida that's not in Miami. And I spent 3 years of my life down there. I'll never get back, but it's just crazy. And you know, and the cost of living, you know, the quality of life too. Which is, you know, try to recruit somebody to go down to Miami who's not from there. Good luck. But so there, you know, and even Tampa, you know, as the Sun Coast develops up along the West Coast, you know, that, you know, you're only 45 minutes from Tampa International. What opportunities may be coming your way? And I think Brooksville at some point is going to get built out, and they're going to look for the next airport up the road. Guess who you are? You know, So, yeah, I see, you know, I see things moving. It may not be as fast as everyone would like to see it, but I think it's coming.
Thank you very much. Anybody else have anything? Dr. Byers, we very much appreciate your coming.
Oh, it's a pleasure.
Hope to see you next month.
With the goodies.
Do we have anything to communicate to the board?
Just the applications we
Right.
talked about.
Good. If there's a way to get that moved up one meeting, that agenda item, that would be great.
Okay.
If not, we'll survive.
Okay.
Throw the meeting open to the public. Does anybody have anything else that they would like to say to the board before we adjourn? Okay, well, thank you very much for coming. Our next meeting is February 8th at 2 o'clock, right here with the donuts and the coffee. So we welcome everybody coming. Thank you so much for coming out. I hope it was useful, a good way to spend an hour on a Thursday afternoon. If there's nothing else,
Move to adjourn.
Second.
moved by Charlie, second by Mark. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you, folks.